I froze in the doorway, unable to believe my own eyes. My daughter, girl, was on her knees in the middle of a huge living room, her trembling hands scrubbing the floor. Her fingers were red, almost raw, and her clothes were old and worn. Towering above her, like a hulk over its prey, stood a woman in her 60s with a cold, contemptuous face. "Faster," she snapped. "Do you think I have all day to watch you crawl around? Useless girl, you are only good for cleaning." Sarah flinched but did not lift her head. She pressed herself closer to the floor as if trying to disappear. I saw her shoulders begin to shake. "My daughter, my child was crying. My name is Martha Evans and I am 55 years old. 5 years ago I went to Italy for work. 5 long years I sent money home, believing I was helping my daughter build a happy life. Whenever we spoke on the phone, Sarah always said everything was fine. A wealthy husband, a beautiful house in Greenwich, Connecticut, comfort and prosperity. I believed her. God, how I believed her. I returned to New York City unexpectedly, hoping to surprise her. I bought a ticket, told no one, and simply arrived. I found the address Sarah had given me, a huge estate behind a tall fence. The gate was slightly open. I walked in. The front door was unlocked. And there I stood in the entryway watching something that shattered my heart into pieces. But before I continue, tell me which city you are from. It is important for us to know where our stories reach. The woman I would later learn was Mrs. Victoria Sterling, my daughter's mother-in-law, kept pressing on. And don't you dare miss the corners. Last time you were lazy again. Do you think I do not notice? You live in my house, eat my food, use what is mine. You should at least do something useful. My Sarah, the same girl I raised with love and care, who was bright and talented and dreamed of becoming a designer, now nodded obediently, not daring to object. I wanted to burst in, scream, pull my daughter out of this nightmare. But something stopped me. Instinct. The understanding that if I interfered now, I would never learn the truth. I would not understand the scale of what was happening here. So I quietly stepped back around the corner and kept watching, clenching my teeth so hard my jaw hurt. Mrs. Sterling walked past Sarah, nearly stepping on her hand, and threw over her shoulder. "When you finish here, go to the kitchen. The lunch dishes are still not washed. And dinner must be ready by 7. Richard likes his food warm. Don't you dare serve it cold." "Understood." Sarah whispered something I could not make out. Mrs. Sterling snorted and walked deeper into the house. I heard a door slam. Only then did Sarah allow herself a sob. Quiet, almost silent, but I heard it. That sound cut right through me. I left the house as quietly as I had entered. My hands were shaking. Only one question echoed in my mind. What is going on here? Where was the wealthy husband? Where was the good life? Where was my confident daughter? And you know what I realized in that moment? What I learned later changed everything. And by the end of this story, I will tell you how one decision I made changed my daughter's life forever. A decision that demanded all my strength, all my money, and all the fury a mother can hold. I stepped away from the house and sat on a bench nearby. I needed to think, to gather myself. I had come hoping to hug my daughter, to share her happiness. Said I saw a servant in what was supposed to be her home. Or was it even hers at all? There were too many questions. And I knew I could not just confront Sarah directly. She was frightened, broken. If I came at her with questions now, she would shut down. She would lie to protect me from the truth, or to protect herself from shame. I needed a plan. And I needed to understand just how deep this hole was, the one my daughter had fallen into. I took out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. She did not answer right away. When she finally picked up, her voice was quiet, almost frightened. "Mom? Where are you?" I gathered all my acting strength and said cheerfully, "I am in New York, sweetheart. I want to see you. I missed you. Maybe we could meet tonight." Pause. "Too long. I cannot today, Mom. I am sorry. I have things to do. Maybe tomorrow." I heard something in her voice I had never heard before. Fear, uncertainty, and something else. Submission. "All right, honey. Tomorrow then." I hung up and looked at the estate. Somewhere behind those walls, my daughter was living in hell. And I had to pull her out of it. At any cost. The next day I returned to the house. But this time I rang the doorbell. Sarah opened it. When she saw me, her face twisted, joy mixed with terror. "Mom? How did you find?" I hugged her. God, she had become so thin. I could feel every bone through her cheap sweater. My girl, who had always been soft and full of life, now weighed maybe 100 pounds. "Let us take a walk," I said firmly. "We need to talk." Sarah glanced fearfully into the house and whispered, "I can't be gone long. Mrs. Sterling, my mother-in-law, she will be back soon. I have to cook lunch." "Half an hour," I insisted. "Just half an hour." We walked to a small park nearby. I sat on a bench and took Sarah's hands. Her fingers were rough, her nails broken. The hands of a woman who worked without rest. "Tell me the truth," I said quietly. "All of it. What is happening here?" Sarah lowered her head. She stayed silent. I could see her fighting with herself, to speak or not to speak. At last she exhaled. "Mom, I did not want you to find out. You worked so hard in Italy, you sent me money. I did not want to upset you. Sarah, please, tell me." She lifted her eyes to mine, filled with tears. "I live like a servant, Mom. I clean the house, cook, do the laundry. Mrs. Sterling, she thinks I am not worthy of her son. That I am poor, useless. She says that if I want to live in their home, I must earn my place. Richard does not defend me. He says I must respect his mother, that she is the real head of the house." I felt something boiling inside me, but I held myself back. I needed to know everything. "And work. You wanted to become a designer." Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "I am forbidden to work. Mrs. Sterling said Richard's wife should stay home and take care of the family. And Richard agreed. I am completely dependent on them, Mom. I have no money of my own. Not even for the bus. I have to ask for everything. But the money I sent you, what happened to it?" Sarah turned away. Her voice grew even quieter. I gave it to Richard. For the business. The family company, it was going through a hard time. Mrs. Sterling said I had to help. That it was my duty as a wife. All your transfers, Mom. Everything went there. I could not believe what I was hearing. All those years I had worked without rest, sending every dollar home thinking I was helping my daughter. And instead, my money went into the pockets of people who were keeping her in a kind of slavery. "Sarah, where do you sleep? Show me your room." She hesitated but agreed. We returned to the house. Thankfully, Mrs. Sterling had not come back yet. Sarah led me to the second floor, to the very end of the hallway. She opened the door to a tiny room. I stepped inside and froze. It was a cage. 10 square meters at most. A narrow bed, an old wardrobe, and nothing else. No personal things. No decorations. Bare walls. I remembered how Sarah told me about their huge house in Greenwich. The house was truly enormous. But for my daughter there was only this. A closet barely fit for household staff. "The wedding gifts I gave you," I whispered. "Where are they?" Sarah lowered her eyes. "Mrs. Sterling said they were cheap and ruined the interior. She threw them away." It was in that moment I understood the scale of the disaster. My daughter was broken. Emotionally, physically, psychologically. She was afraid to speak, afraid to ask, afraid to live. They had turned her into a shadow, a powerless being expected to serve and be grateful. "Sarah," I said, placing my hands on her shoulders, "listen to me carefully. I am getting you out of here. I promise. But I need time. I need to think." She shook her head in fear. "Mom, you do not understand. Richard, his family, they will not forgive this. It will be a scandal. I cannot." "You can," I interrupted, "because I am here. And I will not let them hurt you anymore." We heard the sound of the front door slamming downstairs. Sarah flinched. "That is Mrs. Sterling. You need to go. Quickly." I hugged my daughter tightly and left through the back door. But as I walked away, I knew one thing for certain. The war had just begun. And I had no intention of losing. I called Sarah that evening. We agreed to meet the next morning at a cafe on Fifth Avenue. I needed to talk to her calmly, think through a plan, understand how best to pull her out of this nightmare. The next morning I arrived at the cafe half an hour early. I ordered coffee. I waited. 10 minutes passed. 20. Half an hour. Sarah did not appear. I called her. She answered after a delay, her voice tense. Mom, I am sorry I cannot come. Mrs. Sterling has urgent errands. I have to stay home. She wants me to cook lunch for guests. Sarah, this is important. We agreed. I know, Mom. I am sorry. Maybe tomorrow? I will try. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. But I held myself back. All right. Tomorrow. Same time, same place. The next day the same thing happened. Sarah called 10 minutes before the meeting. Mom, I cannot. Mrs. Sterling is going to the mall and I have to go with her. She says she needs help with shopping. Her voice sounded obedient. As if it were not my daughter speaking but a mindless doll. Sarah, tell her you have a meeting with your mother. Pause. Then a quiet, frightened whisper. I cannot, Mom. She will get angry. Please do not be upset with me. I promise I will get away tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. And neither did the day after. Every time there was an excuse. The mother-in-law needed her. The husband wanted something. Relatives needed to be greeted. Sarah apologized again and again, her voice growing softer, more submissive each time. And then I finally understood. My daughter was not just broken. She was completely subdued. Her will crushed. Her identity erased. She could not even meet her own mother without getting permission from her jailer. I sat in my hotel room staring out the window at the night lights of New York City thinking. Simply talking to Sarah would not be enough. Simply pulling her out of that house would not solve anything either. She would go back. Because she was afraid. Because she had no money, no job, no confidence. I had to act radically. But how? I did not know these people, the Sterlings. I knew nothing about their business, their place in society, their connections. I needed information. I needed to know their weaknesses. And then I remembered. Back in Italy, I had a friend, Mary, who once mentioned her brother. He worked as a private investigator in New York City, gathering background information on people. I contacted Mary immediately. She gave me her brother's number. The next morning, I was sitting in a small office in Midtown Manhattan, across from a man in his mid-40s with sharp, intelligent eyes. George Fowler. He listened attentively to my story, occasionally writing notes in a small notebook. So you need a full report on the Sterling family, he summarized when I finished. Their business, financial situation, connections, and any possible skeletons in the closet. Everything you can find, I nodded. I need to know who I am dealing with. And I need leverage. George looked at me thoughtfully. You understand, Mrs. Evans, an investigation like this takes time. A week, maybe 2. And it is not cheap. Money is not a problem, I said. I have savings. Do whatever you need. Just do it quickly. He nodded. All right. I will start today. The name is Sterling. Their business is related to imports. The estate is in Greenwich. That is enough to begin. I will contact you as soon as I have results. I left the office feeling for the first time that I was doing something right. Not just crying, not just worrying, acting. I still did not know what George would uncover, but I felt it. Something was wrong. People who treat others like that always hide something. There is always dirt they fear will come to light. And I intended to find that dirt. And then use it. Because my daughter did not deserve the life they forced upon her. And I, her mother, would do everything to give her back her freedom. The next few days were tense. I tried calling Sarah, but she either did not answer or said she was busy. I understood. The mother-in-law was controlling her. On the 5th day, George called. His voice was serious. Mrs. Evans, I need to meet with you. I gathered the information. It is more serious than I expected. We met in the same office an hour later. George looked concerned. On the table lay a thick folder. Before I begin, he said slowly, you must understand, what I found will hit you hard. But please, listen to everything. I straightened in my chair. I am ready. Speak. George opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Let us start with the business. Sterling Imports was founded 20 years ago by Richard's father. They imported furniture from Europe. A good business, steady profit. 3 years ago, the father died of a heart attack and the company passed to Richard. That is when the catastrophe began. He showed me a graph with the profit line plummeting. Richard turned out to be a terrible businessman. Impulsive, overconfident. In a year and a half, he turned a successful company into a sinking ship. Employees quit, clients left. 2 years ago, the company stopped making profit and began living on borrowed money. How much debt? I whispered. George met my eyes directly. At this moment, the total debt is $8 million. $5 million in bank loans, $3 million owed to suppliers. $8 million. I could not breathe. 6 months ago, the creditors filed a lawsuit, George continued. The bankruptcy process has already begun. In 2 or 3 months, the company will officially be declared bankrupt. He pulled out another stack of documents. Now about the house. The estate in Greenwich where your daughter lives. 3 years ago, Richard took out a mortgage against it. $3,500,000. The last payment was 8 months ago. The bank filed a lawsuit. The ruling has been issued. The house will be seized and sold. When? I whispered. In a month, maybe 6 weeks. Marshals will come, inventory the property, and evict the residents. The Sterlings will be out on the street. I closed my eyes. So all this time, Sarah lived in a house that was about to be taken away. In a family drowning in massive debt. If they have such problems, where do they get money to live? I asked. I saw the mother-in-law. Expensive clothes, jewelry. George gave a short, humorless laugh. A facade. Mrs. Sterling lives on whatever is left of their old savings. And she constantly borrows from acquaintances. Promises to return the money, never does. Their reputation is ruined. He took out a list. These are the people the Sterlings owe money to. Mrs. Sterling's brother, $30,000. A friend, $50,000. A neighbor, $20,000. Altogether, another $300,000 in smaller debts. I listened, feeling anger rising inside me. These people lived on borrowed money, deceived everyone, and turned my daughter into a maid. And the money I sent to Sarah? I asked. George nodded. I checked your daughter's banking activity. Here are your transfers. Over 5 years, about $150,000. I stared at the numbers, remembering how hard that money had been to earn. Almost immediately after each transfer, the money went straight to the company's account, George explained. Every dollar. They convinced your daughter that she had to support the business. And she gave them everything. He pulled out another bank statement. But the money was not invested in the business. It was withdrawn almost immediately. Spent on personal accounts. Restaurants, clothes, entertainment. They were living on your money. While your daughter scrubbed floors. I could not hold myself together. I covered my face with my hands and cried. For 5 years I had worked without rest, and these parasites ate through my money. George silently poured me some water and waited for me to calm down. I am very sorry, he said quietly. But you needed to know the truth. I wiped my tears. Go on. I need to know everything. George slowly pulled out another set of documents. I checked Richard's personal expenses. Every month, one payment of $6,500 goes out. Always the same amount, always the same day. Rent for an apartment. This has been going on for 2 years. He showed me the statements. I traced it. It is an apartment on 5th Avenue. I checked who lives there. George laid down photographs. A young blonde woman about 25, bright and beautiful. Her name is Vanessa Lane. 26 years old, unemployed. Lives in the apartment paid for by Richard. I took the next photo. The same woman with a man. They were holding hands. From Sarah's descriptions, it was Richard. The third photo, they were kissing. I watched them for 4 days, George said. Richard comes to her 3 or 4 times a week. They behave like a couple. According to my information, this has been going on for about 2 years. 2 years. I stared at the photos, feeling cold fury grow inside me. Does your daughter know? George asked. I shook my head. No. She lives in an illusion. George remained silent for a long time. I have done my work. Now the decision is yours. I slowly gathered the documents into the folder. A plan was forming in my mind. Tell me, Mr. Fowler, I said, if someone buys all their debts, what happens then? He raised his eyebrows in surprise. Buys their debts? If I pay off their creditors, will I become the creditor? Will I be able to demand repayment? George thought for a moment. Technically, yes. It is a legal procedure. But we are talking about more than $10 million. I have savings. I will sell my place in Italy. Close my accounts. Borrow if needed. George looked at me with astonishment. You want to spend everything? To save my daughter, I finished firmly. To show them that justice exists. George nodded slowly. That might work. If you buy the debts, you gain control over their assets, including the house. Help me. I need attorneys. George shook my hand. I have connections. If you are serious, I will put you in touch with them. I am absolutely serious. Start immediately. The next morning, I met with the attorneys George recommended. A team of 3 in an office in the financial district. The senior attorney, Arthur Vance, studied the documents. The situation is catastrophic, he said. Bankruptcy is inevitable. The question is, can you act in time? How much time do I have? I asked. 2 months. Maybe a bit more. But not much. The woman attorney Helen leaned toward me. Do you understand that we are talking about a massive amount of money? More than 100 million. Do you have those kinds of funds? I straightened my back. My savings, 1 million. The apartment in Italy, another 1.5 million. My investment portfolio, 3 million. That makes 5.5 million. If I need more, I will borrow. Arthur Vance nodded. 5.5 million is a serious amount, but barely enough. We will not be able to buy the debts at face value, but we can negotiate. The bank may sell the debt at a discount if we convince them that otherwise they will be waiting years through bankruptcy proceedings. Is there a chance to stay within the budget? There is, Helen said. We will try to buy the major debts with a discount. If we convince the creditors, we can stay within your limit. How much time? 2 to 3 weeks if we work aggressively. Then start. I will transfer the money today. The next 2 weeks were the most stressful of my life. During the day, I met with attorneys and discussed deals. In the evening, I called realtors in Italy. At night, I could not sleep from worry. The apartment in Italy sold quickly. I lowered the price. 1.5 million. I closed the deposits. 3 million. I called my sister Olive. Without hesitation, she transferred 500,000. This is help, Martha. Sarah is my niece. Do what you must. Total, 5 million. The attorneys worked brilliantly. Arthur met with the bank. The negotiations were tough, but he was persuasive. The bank agreed to sell the mortgage debt for 2.8 million instead of 3.5. The house was transferred to me. Helen handled the suppliers. A furniture company from Italy, owed 1,500,000, agreed to sell the debt for 800,000. A construction firm sold 1 million in debt for 600,000. Little by little, the attorneys bought the debts. After 2 weeks, I owned 85% of all sterling debts. I had the right to demand repayment. And since they had no money, I could claim their property. At the final meeting, Arthur laid out the documents. The mortgage on the house has been transferred to you. The sterlings owe you 22 million. You have the right to take the house through court. How fast? A week. 10 days at most. Helen added. As for the company, we have purchased the majority of the debts, about 50 million. That gives you the right to request bankruptcy and act as the primary creditor. I looked at the documents, hardly believing it. I had spent 4.5 million. But the Sterling's company and their home were now legally mine. They do not know yet? No. We acted discreetly. This will be unexpected for them. Good. Now for the hardest part. Helen gave me a sympathetic look. You need to talk to your daughter. I nodded. Yes. Before I go to the Sterlings, I have to tell Sarah the truth. About the debts, about the affair. She must see who they really are. It will be difficult for her. I know. But there is no other way. She must know the truth. David handed me a folder. Here are all the documents, evidence, photographs. I took the folder. Inside was the entire truth. The truth that would break Sarah's heart. I will call her today. I will set a meeting. This time she will not refuse. That evening I called Sarah. Tomorrow 2 p.m. the Plaza Hotel, room 412. You will be there. This is not a request. But Mom, I cannot. If you do not come, I will go to your house and say everything I want to say, in front of your mother-in-law and your husband. The choice is yours. Pause. All right, Sarah whispered. I will come. I booked a room at the plaza. I laid out all the documents and photographs. At exactly 2 o'clock there was a knock. Sarah stood at the door, pale, thin, frightened. Hi, Mom. I hugged her and guided her to the sofa. Sarah, I am going to say something that will change everything. Listen to me until the end. I opened the folder and began explaining. About the debts, $8 million owed by the company, $3.5 million for the house. About how in a month they would have been on the street. Sarah listened, growing paler with every word. That cannot be. Richard said things would get better soon. Look at the dates, I said. The last payment was 8 months ago. They have always lived on borrowed money. I showed her the bank statements, my transfers, and how every dollar went into the company. And then, straight into restaurants, clothes, entertainment. They were burning through my money, Sarah. And they used you to do it. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I took out the photographs. Vanessa, Richard, together. And this is your husband's mistress, Vanessa Lane. He pays for her apartment. For 2 years. While you were on your knees. Sarah took the photo with trembling hands. She stared for a long time. Then she screamed, in pain and rage. A scream of someone whose world had collapsed. I hugged her and held her close. We cried together. The next morning I met Sarah near a subway entrance. She looked pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She had likely not slept at all. I hugged her, feeling her shaking. Are you ready? I asked quietly. Sarah nodded, but fear flashed in her eyes. Mom, I am scared. Mrs. Sterling, she will yell, accuse me. Let her yell, I said firmly. Everything changes today. You will not fear her anymore. Because today she will learn who really controls this house. We took a taxi. Sarah stared out the window in silence. I held her hand to show her. I was there and she would not face this alone. When we arrived at the large Greenwich estate, I saw Sarah tense again. This house had been her prison. A place of humiliation and pain. But today we were here for the last time. I rang the bell. Mrs. Sterling herself opened the door. When she saw us, she raised her brows in surprise. Sarah, where have you been? I waited all evening. Dinner was not cooked, the dishes were not washed. She stopped only when she finally noticed me. And who is this? Her voice turned icy. This is my mother, Sarah whispered. Oh, your mother, Mrs. Sterling drawled, looking me up and down with contempt. Well then, come in if you must. But not for long, we have things to do. We stepped inside. In the living room on the couch sat Richard, tall, dark-haired, about 32. It was my first time seeing him. He was flipping through a magazine and did not even look up when we entered. Richard, Mrs. Sterling called out, we have visitors. Sarah's mother has graced us. Richard finally lifted his eyes, glanced at us and shrugged. Oh, hello, he said indifferently, then returned to his magazine. I stood in the middle of that luxurious living room and looked at these people. The arrogant mother-in-law, the indifferent husband. These were the ones who had turned my daughter into a servant. Sit, Mrs. Sterling ordered, pointing at a chair as if speaking to household staff. Sarah, go to the kitchen, put the kettle on. Or does your mother not deserve tea? Sarah automatically stepped toward the kitchen. But I stopped her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Sarah is not going anywhere. And she will never again make tea for you. Mrs. Sterling slowly turned to me. Her eyes narrowed. What did you say? You heard me perfectly well. I took a folder from my bag and placed it on the table. My name is Martha Evans and I came to inform you of something important. This house no longer belongs to you. And neither does your company. All of it is now mine. Silence. Absolute heavy silence. Richard raised his head, staring at me. Mrs. Sterling froze, confused. What nonsense is this?" she finally stammered. "Yours. Have you lost your mind?" I calmly opened the folder and took out the documents. "Here is the mortgage contract for this house. The debt? $3,500,000. No payments for 8 months. The bank filed a lawsuit and received the right to seize the house. But 3 weeks ago I bought that debt from the bank. You no longer owe the bank, you owe me. And I have full legal authority to evict you." Richard jumped up, snatched the document from my hands, reading it as his face drained of color. Mrs. Sterling leaned over his shoulder, blinking rapidly. This must be a mistake," she screamed. "This is impossible." "It's entirely legal," I replied. "Here is the court order. Here is the assignment of rights. Everything notarized. The house is mine." I pulled out the next set of documents. "And here is your company, Sterling Imports. Your debt, $8 million. I bought the majority of that debt from your creditors. The company is in bankruptcy proceedings and I am now the primary creditor. Meaning whatever is left of it also belongs to me." Richard stared at the papers. I watched his expression shift, arrogance turning into confusion, then panic. Where did you get this kind of money?" he whispered. "I worked in Italy for 5 years," I said sharply. "I earned every dollar. I sent money to my daughter believing I was helping her build a happy life. And you were burning through that money. My money. While my daughter was on her knees scrubbing your floors." Mrs. Sterling flinched as if I had struck her. We did not know." "Richard, say something." Richard opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, but no words came. "You have 24 hours, I said coldly. "By tomorrow evening you will vacate this house. Take your personal belongings and leave. If you are still here after 24 hours, I will call the marshals and they will remove you by force." Mrs. Sterling suddenly lunged toward me. "You have no right. This is our home. We have lived here for 20 years. "You have lived on debt for 20 years, I corrected her. "On money you borrowed and never repaid. And now the bill has come due." She whirled toward Sarah. "This is your fault. You brought this woman here. You want to throw us onto the street." And then it happened, the moment I had done all of this for. Sarah, my quiet, crushed, terrified daughter, straightened her back and looked her mother-in-law directly in the eyes. "Yes," she said firmly. "I want you to leave. Because you turned me into a servant. You humiliated me every single day. You made me feel like nothing." He turned to Richard. "And you never defended me. Not once. You let your mother torment me. You said I had to endure it, respect her, serve her." Richard stepped toward her. "Sarah, please, Do not come closer," she said, raising her hand. "I am not finished. I know about Vanessa." Richard froze. His face turned white. "I know you cheated on me for 2 years," Sarah continued, her voice trembling but steady. "I know you paid for her apartment. I know you spent money on her. While I scrubbed these floors and cooked your dinners, you were with her." "Sarah, it is not." "I can explain," Richard began, but she cut him off. "I do not need your explanations. I do not need anything from you. I am tired. Tired of being a maid. Tired of being nobody. Tired of pretending I had a family when all I had was a cage." Tears streamed down her face, but she stood tall. "I am filing for divorce, Richard. Tomorrow. And I am leaving this place. Forever." Mrs. Sterling screamed. "You ungrateful girl. We sheltered you, fed you, gave you a roof over your head." Sarah turned to her. "You turned me into a slave. But that ends today." Suddenly Richard fell to his knees before Sarah. "Sarah, please do not go. I will change. I will be different. I love you." "If you loved me," Sarah said quietly, "you would not have let your mother degrade me. You would not have cheated on me for 2 years. You would have protected me, not hidden behind her." She stepped away from him and took my hand. "Mom, let's go. I need to pack." We went upstairs to that tiny room on the 2nd floor. Sarah opened the old wardrobe and began placing her clothes into a bag. There were so few things. Everything fit into 2 small suitcases. "That is all." I whispered. 5 years of marriage, and this is all you have? Sarah gave a sad smile. Mrs. Sterling always said I did not need much, that I should be modest. In reality, she just did not want to spend money on me. She closed the suitcases and looked around the cramped little room one last time. You know, Mom, I thought I would cry when leaving this place. But no. I feel only relief. We walked downstairs. In the living room, Mrs. Sterling sat on the couch with her face buried in her hands. Richard stood by the window staring into nothing. We walked past them toward the door. At the threshold, Richard called out, "Sarah, I am sorry." Sarah turned, looked at him for a long moment. "I do not know if I will ever be able to forgive you. But I know one thing, I am never coming back here." We stepped outside, got into a taxi, and as soon as the car started moving, Sarah suddenly burst into tears, loud, helpless, like a child. I hugged her, held her close, stroked her hair. She cried out 5 years of pain, humiliation, and loneliness. "It is all right, sweetheart," I whispered. "It is over. Now a new life begins. Your life." Just then Richard ran out of the house. By the time we were getting into the taxi, he was already running down the driveway, shouting, Sarah, wait. Please." I saw him in the rearview mirror, unshaven, disheveled, desperate. He was waving his arms, trying to stop the car. "Drive," I said firmly to the driver. Sarah sat beside me, gripping my hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. She did not look back. She stared straight ahead, tears streaming down her face in an endless flow. Richard ran after the taxi for another 50 yards before stopping in the middle of the road, bending over, breathless. His figure grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared behind the turn. "He ran after me," Sarah whispered. "In 5 years he never once defended me from his mother, but now he ran." "It is too late," I said quietly. "Some things cannot be undone." We drove in silence. Sarah looked out the window at the passing houses, trees, people. Normal life, the kind she had not had for so long. "Where are we going, Mom?" she finally asked. "Home," I smiled. "To our home." I rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in the Upper West Side. Bright, cozy, with a view of the park. When we entered, Sarah froze on the threshold, looking around the rooms. Is this for me?" "For us," I corrected her. "Until you get back on your feet, we will live together. And then when you are ready, we will find you your own place." Sarah stepped into the room I had prepared for her. Bright, with a large window, a comfortable bed, a desk. On the desk, I had placed a vase of flowers. "Mom," Sarah turned to me, her lips trembling, "this is too much. You spent all your money on me, bought their debts, rented this apartment. I do not deserve." "Stop." I walked to her and held her by the shoulders. "You deserve this and so much more. You're my daughter. And I will do everything to help you feel human again. To remind you who you really are." Sarah hugged me and broke into tears once more. We stood there for a long time in the middle of that bright room, and I felt every tear washing away her pain, her fear, her humiliation. The first days were difficult. Sarah hardly left her room. She lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, sometimes crying, sometimes silent for hours. I brought her food, but she barely ate. "It feels unreal," she told me one evening. "Like I will wake up and be back in that tiny room. And Mrs. Sterling will be yelling at me for not scrubbing the floor properly." "It is real, Sarah," I said, sitting next to her. "You are free. Forever." But freedom was not simple. Sarah had been broken so deeply that she did not know how to live without commands, without control, without constant humiliation. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw her scrubbing the floor on her knees, exactly the way she had in the Sterling's house. "Sarah, what are you doing?" I asked gently. She looked up with frightened eyes. The floor is dirty. I have to clean it." "You do not have to. This is your home. You are not a servant." "But I am used to," her voice shook. "I do not know how else to be." I knelt beside her and hugged her. "We will learn again. Together. Do not rush." I booked her an appointment with a psychologist, a skilled specialist who worked with survivors of emotional abuse. Dr. Karen Stone. a wise, compassionate woman in her 50s. After the first session, Sarah came home and said, "She says I have post-traumatic stress disorder. That I was in a toxic relationship. She says I need time to recover." "How much time?" I asked. Sarah gave a sad smile. She said it is different for everyone. But definitely not quickly. And she was right, recovery was slow. There were good days when Sarah smiled, walked with me through the Upper West Side, even laughed. And there were bad days, when she could not get out of bed, when panic attacks overwhelmed her, when she cried from memories. At night, nightmares tormented her. She woke up screaming, drenched in cold sweat. I rushed to her, held her hand until she calmed down. "I dreamed I was there again," she whispered. "That all this was just a dream and I was still in their house. And there was no way out. It is just a dream, sweetheart. You are here with me. Safe." A week later, Richard called. I answered first. "I need to talk to Sarah," he said. His voice was tired, broken. "Sarah does not want to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes. I must explain." "It is too late to explain, Richard. Leave her alone." "I love her." "If you loved her," I said harshly, "you would not have allowed what happened. Do not call again." I hung up the phone. Sarah stood in the doorway, pale. "Was that him?" "Yes. But you do not have to talk to him." "I do not want to," she said quietly. "I have nothing to say to him." 2 weeks later, we filed for divorce. In court, Richard Sterling tried to approach Sarah, but she turned away. He stood off to the side, watching her with sorrow, but she never lifted her eyes. The divorce process was quick. There was no property to divide. Sarah had nothing except 2 small bags of clothes. The court ruled the marriage dissolved. When we stepped outside the courthouse, Sarah stopped on the stairs and took a deep breath. "I am free. Officially free." "Yes," I said, hugging her. "Now you can start your life again." But starting over was not easy. 5 years without work, without study, without growth, she had forgotten who she was. I found her old sketchbook, the one she kept before marriage, and brought it to her. "Remember? You wanted to become a designer. You used to draw beautifully." Sarah flipped through the pages. I saw a spark, something long forgotten. "I forgot I loved this," she whispered. "Try again. Not for money, not for anyone. Just for yourself." She took the pencils and began to draw. Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. After hours of work, she showed me the drawing. "This is us. At the park. 2 figures, mother and daughter, walking under the trees. It is beautiful, Sarah. I have not drawn in 5 years. I missed it so much." From that day on, she drew daily. First sketches, then more complex work. Dr. Karen Stone, her psychologist, said this was part of healing, reclaiming what once made her happy. Slowly, painfully slowly, my daughter began returning to life. She still woke from nightmares, still cried without reason, but the dark moments grew fewer, and her smiles grew more frequent. One evening, we sat on the balcony drinking tea. Sarah watched the sunset. "Thank you, Mom." "For what?" "For saving me. I never would have escaped on my own." I squeezed her hand. "You are my daughter. I would have done anything." "I am still not okay," she whispered. "You will not be who you were. You will be someone new, stronger, wiser, and happier. It takes time." "How much time?" "As long as you need." A month after Sarah left the Sterlings, I began selling their property. The estate in Greenwich, Connecticut was already mine legally. Now I needed to sell it and close all remaining financial matters. I hired a real estate agent specializing in luxury property. After inspection, he said, "Excellent home. Prestigious area. We can sell quickly. The market price is $4.5 million, but for a fast sale we can list it for $4 million. "List it for $4 million, I said. A buyer appeared in 2 weeks. The deal went smoothly. $4 million were transferred to my account. The company, Sterling Imports, was more complicated. Bankruptcy had already stripped it of assets. Only office furniture, a few computers, and 2 cars remained. Everything was sold at auction for about $30,000. I gathered all money from the house sale and the remaining company assets and paid off the debts. The bank, $2,800,000. Suppliers, $1,500,000. Smaller debts to acquaintances, $300,000. When everything was settled, I had $500,000 left, the remainder of everything I had spent to save my daughter. I had spent almost everything I had earned in my life, but my daughter was free. And that was worth every dollar. I came home in the evening and Sarah was sitting at the table drawing. Over the past month, she had created an entire series of works. Landscapes, portraits, abstractions. Her psychologist said it was a good sign that creativity helped her heal. "Sarah," I called softly, "I need to talk to you." She set down her pencil and looked at me. "Did something happen?" I sat beside her and placed a bank card on the table. "I sold the Sterling's house and cleared all their debts. After every calculation was finished, there were $500,000 left. These are your funds, Sarah." She looked at the card in surprise. "Mine? But Mom, this is your money." "No," I shook my head. "It is yours. For 5 years you gave them everything, every dollar I sent you. Everything you had they took. These $500,000 are your foundation. For a new start. To study, to open your own business, to rent your own place someday. This is the beginning of your new life." Sarah looked at the card, tears running down her cheeks. "Mom, I do not know what to say." "You do not need to say anything. Just live. Do what makes you happy. You are free now and you have resources. Everything else depends on you." She hugged me tightly. "I will try. I promise." And she truly did. A week later, Sarah signed up for online courses in graphic design. She studied several hours a day, watched lectures, completed assignments. I saw her changing, becoming more confident, more focused. A month later, she created a portfolio and registered on a freelance platform. Her first commission came after a week, a simple logo for a small coffee shop. They paid her $250. She ran to me glowing. "Mom, I got my first project. The first money I earned myself in 5 years." I hugged her. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart." Slowly more commissions followed. Business cards, flyers, websites. Her clients left good reviews and recommended her to others. She began to feel needed again. A professional, a valuable person. And what happened to the Sterlings? I learned their fate from George Fowler, whom I sometimes called for updates. Out of habit as a detective, he continued to follow the family. Mrs. Sterling moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of New York City, he said. She rents it for $1,200 a month. She has no money left at all. At first, she tried borrowing from old acquaintances, but everyone turned away. They all remember how much she owed and never repaid. How is she surviving? She works at a farmer's market. Sells fruits and vegetables. She gets up at 5 in the morning and stands outside all day in any weather. Looks exhausted, old or worn down. No luxury, no jewelry. Just an ordinary market vendor. I pictured the proud, arrogant woman who had humiliated my daughter, now standing in worn-out shoes at a cold market stall. Justice. And Richard? I asked. George sighed. It is bad for him. After the divorce, he tried living with his mother, but they fought constantly. She blamed him for everything. He left and rented a small room in a shared apartment. Is he working? He tried. But his reputation is ruined. Everyone in his business circle knows he destroyed his father's company. No one wants anything to do with him. Eventually he fell into depression. Started drinking. George paused. Vanessa Lane, his mistress, left him immediately when she found out the money was gone. She did not even say goodbye, just stopped answering his calls. Richard went to her apartment and there was already another man living with her. Someone wealthier. So she used him? Of course. A young woman who does not work and lives in an expensive apartment paid for by someone else. She is always looking for the next provider. Richard stopped paying. She found a new sugar daddy. I felt something strange. On one hand, Richard deserved everything that happened. On the other, he was pitiful. He had lost everything. His family, his money, his mistress, his reputation. The last time I saw him was a month ago, George continued. Drunk, unshaven, in filthy clothes. Wandering the streets. Completely fallen apart. I heard he has been taken to detox several times. That is sad, I said quietly. Yes. But it is his choice, Mrs. Evans. No one forced him to cheat on his wife, waste his father's business, or humiliate your daughter. Another 6 months passed. Then one day George called again. I have news about Richard Sterling, he said. He has started therapy. What? Yes. It seems that when he hit rock bottom, he realized he could not keep living that way. He checked himself into a rehabilitation center and received treatment for alcohol addiction. He spent 3 months there. He came out sober. Found a job. A simple office manager at a small company. Rents a room, lives modestly. Attends Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. So he is trying to rebuild his life? He's trying. I do not know if he will succeed. But at least he is trying. I told Sarah about it that evening. She listened silently and then said, You know, Mom, I do not feel anger toward him. Or pity. Nothing. He feels like someone from another life. As if it never happened to me at all. That is good, I nodded. It means you let go. Yes, Sarah looked at me calmly. I have let go. If he wants to repair his life, let him. But it is not my story anymore. My story is different now. A few months later, George Fowler called again. Richard Sterling tried to contact Sarah. He sent her a message through social media. What did he write? An apology. That he understood everything he had done. That he is in therapy. That he wants to become a better person. He asked for forgiveness. Asked if they could meet and talk. Did Sarah see the message? I do not know. But if she did, it is her choice whether to answer. That evening I asked Sarah, Did Richard write to you? She nodded. Yes. I saw the message. And what did you reply? Sarah looked at me with steady eyes. Nothing. I did not respond. And I am not going to. I do not need his apologies, Mom. I do not need explanations. He is no longer part of my life. I moved on. You are sure? Completely. He can work on himself, go to therapy, become a better man. I sincerely wish him well. But not with me. I closed that door. Forever. I hugged her. I am proud of you. You have become so strong. Sarah smiled softly. I learned from the best. From you, Mom. A year after the divorce, Sarah was already working as a full-time freelancer, receiving good commissions and earning steadily. She rented her own one-bedroom apartment not far from me and furnished it the way she liked. Mom, look, she showed me the apartment on the day she moved in. It is mine. My own space. Something I earned myself. Her eyes shone with pride. And I understood. My daughter had returned. No, she had not returned. He had become someone new. Stronger, wiser, freer. And somewhere in New York City, Mrs. Victoria Sterling stood at a market stall selling produce. And Richard Sterling was trying to piece together the ruins of his life. But that was their story now. Not ours. One autumn evening, Sarah came over for tea and told me she had signed up for web design courses. I want to expand my skills. To do not only graphic work but full websites too. That is wonderful, I said. You have grown so much professionally this year. Sarah smiled. You know, Mom, sometimes I do not recognize myself. A year ago I was afraid to make decisions, afraid to say what I thought. And now I work, I earn, I live in my own apartment. And I like it. The classes were twice a week in downtown New York City. Sarah came home inspired, telling me about new techniques, software, and projects. A month later she mentioned, We have a great instructor. He explains complicated things so simply that everything suddenly makes sense. I paid no special attention at first. But a week later, Sarah mentioned him again. Andrew showed us his portfolio today. He does design for major companies. Very talented. And humble, he does not brag at all. 2 weeks later, she told me quietly, Mom, Andrew asked if I wanted to grab a coffee after class. Just to discuss projects and share experience. Do you mind? I looked at her closely. Sarah blushed slightly and lowered her eyes. Sarah, you are an adult woman. You do not need my permission. I know, but, she hesitated. I am a little scared. After everything, I do not know if I am ready for anything like a relationship. I took her hand. No one is talking about a relationship. It is just coffee. Just a conversation. Do not rush. Do not be afraid. Just give yourself a chance. They went out for coffee. Then again. Then Andrew invited her to a design exhibition. Sarah came home after each meeting and told me, "He is so calm, Mom. He does not pressure me, he does not rush anything. His talk. About work, about life, about dreams. I feel comfortable with him." Tell me more about him. Sarah thought for a moment. He is 35. Divorced, no children. Works as a freelancer like me. Lives alone. Loves reading and visiting museums. Very kind. And most importantly, he listens. He truly listens when I speak. 3 months passed. Sarah and Andrew continued seeing each other. They went to the movies, walked around the city, worked together on projects and cafes. Their relationship grew slowly, carefully. One day Sarah came to me and said, "Andrew knows about my past." I told him. About the marriage, the Sterlings, everything. And how did he react? He hugged me and said, "Thank you for trusting me. You are a very strong woman." He did not pity me, he did not judge me. He simply accepted it. I saw how Sarah blossomed next to this man. She smiled more, laughed more easily. There was a light in her eyes that I had not seen in years. 6 months later, Andrew came to visit me. A tall, calm man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. We talked over tea and I understood right away he was a good person. "Mrs. Evans," he said before leaving, "I want you to know that I care about Sarah very much. I know what she went through, and I will never hurt her. That is a promise. I believe you, Andrew. I see how happy my daughter is beside you." And Sarah truly was happy. She was slowly learning to trust again. Sometimes her old fears returned. The fear of being rejected, the fear of falling into another trap. "We argued yesterday," she admitted one day. "Andrew said that I was working too much and needed a break. And suddenly I got scared, thinking he wanted to control me. I started defending myself. And what happened then?" He said calmly, "Sarah, I am not trying to control you. I'm just worried about you. But the decision is always yours." And I understood he is not Richard. He is different. Moments like these taught Sarah to distinguish healthy relationships from toxic ones. Andrew gave her space, respected her boundaries, supported her choices. He did not try to change her or break her. He accepted her exactly as she was. By the end of the year, Sarah said to me, "Mom, I believe in love again. I thought I would never trust anyone after Richard Sterling. But Andrew showed me that real love is not pain and humiliation. It is support, respect, and freedom. You deserve exactly that kind of love, sweetheart." Sarah hugged me. "Thank you for not letting me break. For pulling me out of that life. Without you, I would never have met Andrew. I would never have learned what real love should be." I stroked her hair and thought, my girl had walked through hell. But she survived. She healed. And now she was ready to love again. Ready for healthy, kind, happy relationships. Sarah and Andrew had been together for 1.5 years. Their relationship was calm, harmonious, built on mutual respect. I saw how Sarah changed next to him. She became more confident, happier, whole. Andrew never raised his voice. Never criticized her work or decisions. When Sarah had a complicated project and worked late, he brought her dinner and sat quietly beside her. When she had panic attacks, echoes of the past, he simply held her hand and said, "I am here. You are safe." One day Sarah told me a story that showed me just how different Andrew was from Richard Sterling. "Yesterday I accidentally broke his favorite mug. A handmade one, expensive. I panicked and started apologizing, almost crying. Do you know what he said?" "What did he say?" "Sarah, it is just a mug. The important thing is that you did not hurt yourself. I will buy another one." And he smiled. I realized that I used to be terrified of making even the smallest mistake. Because Richard and Mrs. Sterling made a scandal out of everything. But Andrew, he just hugged me and said it was okay. I saw tears in her eyes, not from pain but from relief. from understanding what healthy love looks like. Now I see the difference between what was and what is, Sarah continued. I used to think love meant enduring, forgiving, sacrificing yourself. But now I know, love is when you are valued, respected, supported. When you can be yourself and not be afraid. In the winter, Andrew introduced Sarah to his parents. They welcomed her warmly, without questions about her past, without judgment. His mother, a kind woman in her 60s, hugged Sarah goodbye and said, "My son is very happy with you. Thank you for being in his life." Sarah cried the whole way home, from happiness, from being accepted, from feeling that she had a family again. A few months later, on a spring day, Andrew invited her for a walk in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. They wandered through the park, admiring the flowers. Then they stopped at a lookout point with a view of the East River. Andrew took Sarah's hands and said, "Sarah, I want to ask you something. I know you had a painful past. I know you are afraid to trust again. But I want you to know, I love you. With all my heart. And I want to be with you always. Not because you owe me anything, not because I want to control you, but because you make my life better. And I hope I make yours better too." He took out a small box and got down on one knee. "Will you marry me?" Sarah stood there with her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Andrew, at the ring, at the blooming trees around them. And she slowly nodded. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." They embraced, and I know this story because Sarah called me immediately, breathless with happiness. "Mom," he proposed. I said yes. "I am getting married." I cried with joy as I listened to her excited voice. My daughter, the same girl who 2 years earlier was a broken shadow, was now getting married for love. Real healthy love. The wedding was small and warm. Only the closest people. My sister Olive from Boston, Andrew's parents, a few friends. No showiness, no luxury. Just a bright summer day, a simple white dress, and happy faces. When Sarah walked down the aisle, I watched her and could not hold back tears. She was beautiful. Not because of how she looked, though she glowed from within, but because she was whole, free, happy. After the ceremony, Sarah came up to me. "Thank you, Mom. For everything. For saving me. For not letting me break. For the fact that I am here today with a man who truly loves me." I hugged her. "You walked this path yourself, sweetheart. I only helped you take the first step." Sarah and Andrew went on a short honeymoon to Italy, the same Italy where I once worked. They sent me photos. Smiling, hugging, standing against the Colosseum, the Venetian canals, the Florentine cathedrals. When they returned, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. They lived in Andrew's apartment, worked on projects together, made plans for the future. A year after the wedding, Sarah called me, and I heard something special in her voice. "Mom, can you come over? Right now. I have good news." I arrived in 30 minutes. Sarah opened the door, smiling from ear to ear. "I am pregnant." I hugged her and we both cried, from happiness, from overwhelming emotion. My daughter, who had survived so much pain, was now carrying a new life. "Does Andrew know?" "Yes," Sarah laughed through tears. "He is in shock in a good way. He treats me as if I were made of glass. He is afraid I might get tired or lift something heavy." The pregnancy went well. Andrew was the perfect future father, attentive, caring, patient. He went with Sarah to every appointment, read books about raising children, prepared the nursery. And then in the fall, Tina was born. A tiny girl with dark hair and big eyes. When I saw her for the first time, my heart overflowed. It was a new chapter. A new beginning. Sarah held Tina in her arms and whispered, "Hello, little one. I am your mom. And I promise you will always know what love is. Real love. You will grow up in a family where you are respected, valued, supported. You will never know humiliation or pain. I promise." I stood beside her and understood. The circle had closed. My daughter had walked through hell, survived, healed, and now was giving life to someone who would grow up in love and happiness. I sit now on the balcony of my apartment holding a cup of coffee and looking at New York City. 5 years have passed since the day I found Sarah on her knees in the Sterling's house. 5 years that changed everything. Today Sarah will come visit me with Tina. My granddaughter. a bright, clever girl growing up in love and care. Sarah has become a successful designer with her own studio, steady clients, and an excellent reputation. Andrew is beside her, a devoted husband and wonderful father. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had never returned from Italy that day. If I had not seen the truth with my own eyes. Sarah would still be living in that nightmare, believing she had to endure it. Recently, George Fowler called. Yes, we still speak occasionally. He said Richard Sterling is still trying to rebuild his life. He works, he does not drink, he goes to therapy. But he has lost everything, his family, his business, his reputation. Mrs. Sterling still works at the market. Their lives became what they always truly were, without the glamorous facade, without illusions. I do not pity them. Justice came not through revenge but through the consequences of their own actions. They destroyed their lives themselves, through greed, cruelty, and lies. But Sarah, my Sarah is free. She knows now that love must never diminish you. Love must lift you, support you, give you wings. She knows that dignity is not a luxury but a necessity. That justice exists even if you have to fight for it. I spent all my money to save my daughter. And you know what? I never regretted it, not even once. Because money can be earned again. But a daughter is only one. And seeing her happy, free, and loved is worth more than any fortune. The doorbell rang. I opened the door and Tina rushed into the apartment, shouting, "Grandma!" I lifted her into my arms and kissed her cheek. Sarah stood in the doorway, smiling. Happy, beautiful, alive. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart. Come in, I baked some pastries." We sat at the table, drank tea, laughed. An ordinary family evening. But for me it was a miracle. A miracle I had fought for. And if my story inspires even one person to fight for their loved ones, to protect their dignity, to refuse to accept injustice, then I shared it for a reason. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. Write in the comments which moment touched you the most. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss new stories. Give this video a like if you believe that a mother's love can do anything, and that dignity cannot be taken away, only surrendered. And before you go, check out the story we left for you here on the screen. I am sure it will move you and make you think.